Welcome to TRT World. I am Semir Sejfovic, and in this week's Across the Balkans, we are in Srebrenica, Bosnia and Herzegovina, commemorating the 30th anniversary of the genocide. The 11th of July marks 30 years since Bosnian Serb forces murdered around 8,000 Bosniak men and boys during the 1992 to 1995 war. In 2007, the UN's top court ruled it a genocide, a judgment that also underscored the UN's failure to prevent it. Adam Amunu has more.
The very mention of Srebrenica evokes forced displacement, mass execution, and enduring grief. A grief carried by the survivors, including the mothers, wives, sisters, and daughters who continue to seek justice, truth, and remembrance.
It's a sobering remark, as the world marks the 30th anniversary since the Srebrenica Genocide took place on the 11th of July, 1995. Last year, the draft resolution for the annual Remembrance Day was ratified in a vote at the United Nations, with 84 countries like Turkey, Albania, the US, Chile, Rwanda and New Zealand voting in support of it, and 19 countries in opposition. Among those opposed is Serbia's President Aleksandar Vučić and leader of the Republika Srpska Milorad Dodik. From 1992 to 1995, in the aftermath of the breakup of the Socialist Federation of Yugoslavia, Bosnian Serbs, with the help of Slobodan Milosevic's government, made genocidal moves against Bosnian Muslims to carve out territory for ethnic Serbs. It resulted in Serbian forces killing over 8,000 Muslim Bosnian boys and men who captured Srebrenica. The town was a designated protected zone under the UN's peacekeeping mandate. The genocide in Srebrenica occurred in the aftermath of the 1994 Rwandan genocide, in which hundreds of thousands of Tutsis were killed, another stain on the UN.
Men of all the world took hope. Peace and decency were assured as the representatives of the United Nations signed the San Francisco Charter. The lessons learned in 1945, if mankind would remember them, could make the world a better place for all men.
The UN was established in 1945 to safeguard post-war peace following the Second World War, and according to its charter, save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. But it was unable to prevent what would become the first genocide in Europe since the Holocaust. The UN only deployed a few thousand troops around Bosnia. The Dutch peacekeepers meant to guard Srebrenica were not heavily armed. They were few in number and were unable to put up a substantial defense against Serb forces that were backed by Belgrade.
It's a very serious step in the escalation. A safe area has been stormed, has been taken by the Bosnian Serb forces. So the Security Council has to react. It's up to you to decide which means you want to use, but we support you, and if you want to use force, we also support you.
Today's situation in and around Srebrenica?
Mainly it is under control of Serbian troops. The terrorist elements may cause further troubles, but people, civilians, as well as UN personnel are completely safe and secure.
An internal investigation revealed the UN's leadership had adopted a stance of appeasement toward Bosnian Serb leaders like Mladic, prioritizing negotiation over action. Another failure was that the UN's peacekeeping model relied on unarmed consent from all parties and insisted that the bloc's troops could not act as a fighting force. This year's commemoration is a small consolation for the many survivors who are yet to locate the remains of their loved ones. 3 decades on, the remains of around 1,000 victims are yet to be found. Sadiq Selimovic is a survivor whose search for his family led him to become an investigator at the Bosnian Institute for Missing Persons.
Blizina rijeke je Drini. Znači, najveća masovna grobnica je Drina. I to nikad niko neće naći. Neće baš, neke ćemo ljude pronaći, masovne grobnice, one ako postoje, ali mislim da postoje, mi ćemo i naći. Pa kako tako? Da li će neko slučajno naići na njih, da li ćemo mi nekim metodama, je ovo problem s ove pojedine.
The commemoration also looms as a small consolation in light of the ongoing genocide in Gaza at the hands of Israel. More than 57,000 Palestinians in the Strip have been killed since Hamas's attacks on the 7th of October 2023. More than 1,100 Israelis were killed and more than 200 were taken as hostages. History is repeating itself as the global community seems unable to stop Israel's attacks on Gazan civilians. And as the genocide on Gaza continues, why are lessons from past atrocities not being learned? And how much more damning will history be in light of the genocide ongoing today? Adam Amunu across the Balkans.
More than 30,000 people went missing during the Bosnian War, and thousands are still unaccounted for. We speak to Dragana Vučetić, senior forensics anthropologist at the International Commission on Missing Persons. With 2 decades experience identifying remains from mass graves, she's been central to efforts for justice and closure. Dr. Vučetić, thank you very much for speaking to TRT World and the show Across the Balkans. It has been 30 years since the Srebrenica Genocide of July 11th, 1995. What is this room that we're in right now, and what does it actually depict with the time that has passed?
We are right now in a storage room in Tuzla. This is a place where we keep all skeletal remains related with Srebrenica. So all skeletal remains, clothing and personal items right now are here in storage. So this is cases which are not buried yet or identified yet. Right now we have around 200 active cases in this facility, and those cases will be identified and buried in some time of the future.
With the amount of the skeletons that we're seeing here, how difficult has your job been, considering it has been 30 years and people are still missing, people are still unidentified, to bring it closer to the audience? How difficult is it to look for people who went missing, to identify bones, and what is the process?
Complete process of identification is very difficult and sometimes takes so many months to identify one person. Srebrenica event is very unique in Bosnian history, since that we have around 8,000 people who've been killed in July of 1995. We know that at least 5 big execution places in the area of Srebrenica, Bratunac and Zvornik. So those people have been captured and buried in primary graves. But perpetrators 3 or 4 months after July 1995, in September and beginning of October, they open again those primary graves and they remove those bodies on different locations. So basically they created numerous secondary mass graves. The composition of bodies started after 3 months of death, and they destroy integrity of individuals. So sometimes they would open again primary grave and move completely that grave to another locations, 10, 20, even 100 kilometers from original location. Sometimes they would leave some corpses in the primary grave. So in that time, in 1996, 1997, right after war, a DNA method wasn't developed. So we had very big issue to identify bodies. So in this facility, until 2002, we identify around 100 individuals based on traditional method of identification, based on recognition of corpses, based on recognition of clothing and personal items. We started with DNA testing at the end of 2001. For example, in 2002, we had over 500 official identifications. So that was a milestone in science, in our job. So DNA method helped us to identify such a big number of victims. So far, we identified nearly 7,000 victims who died in Srebrenica, but still 1,000 people still missing. So the huge problem in Srebrenica is that we have remains of one person in multiple locations. Very often, we have remains of one person in one primary grave and multiple secondary graves. So that is the only reason why this process takes so long. Sometimes we need time to complete bodies. Very often we are not able to complete bodies. Very often we identify or buried incomplete elements. So maybe in the future we're going to find additional elements, additional body parts, and we can do re-exhumation. So that is also very often what we do. Every July we do re-exhumation. So far we did over 1,000 re-exhumation. For this July we're going to do around 90 re-exhumation. So those bodies already identified and buried in Potocari Memorial Center, but we found new additional bones which have matched with original identified cases.
When you say primary, secondary mass graves, what was the purpose of moving body parts?
They wanted to hide evidence. That was the only purpose, because information came to light that American government has information about location of primary graves. So that information became public, and that was obviously the trigger that perpetrators wanted to hide evidence. So they started immediately to move skeletal remains to the other location. That was a very good organized job, probably several months. That was the process when they did removing. They had persons who would choose locations where they would hide those material, those skeletal material. So that was a lot of people being involved, obviously, in that process. And they did that in September and October when the decomposition of bodies started. So they destroy integrity of individuals. They dismember those individuals, and that is the problem. So for us, for archaeologists and anthropologists, that is a huge issue, how to excavate properly those primary and secondary mass graves. At the beginning, we didn't know how to deal with that, because nobody of the persons or doctors or archaeologists, nobody of us had enough experience with such a problem, because we didn't know that we're going to face with secondary, tertiary mass graves. So it is huge. It is very important that excavations has to do using scientific methods and approach that archaeologists try to put in one body bag remains of one individual. Then we do in facility anthropological examination and try to make sure that all elements which we have on the table belong to one individual. Sometimes it happens that we have commingled remains, that we have mixed elements. That's why anthropologists has to try to divide all that elements based on using anthropological skills based on differences in morphology of the skeletal material, and we sample those remains. Also, what is important to say that we don't sample every bone. We take only one DNA sample per one anthropological unit, per one, for example, per one body. If we have some suspicions, then in that cases we would take more DNA samples, but in general, for one body, we're going to take only one DNA sample.
What was the evidence that you found in your research which proves that this was systematic, that this was planned, from the executions to the attempt to hide what had happened on July 11th, 1995?
Definitely, that is a huge number of victims who've been killed. We know around that area around Drina, those people have been captured. They've been civilians. They've been captured and killed. That was a massive killing, and they've been buried in primary graves. But that removing those bodies to secondary or tertiary mass grave is, in my opinion, a second crime that was committed under those innocent civilians. So during excavation, sometimes we find proofs about violent murders on those people. We find bullets or ligatures or blindfolds, and that police, of course, use those evidence for the future trial. So our job here in this facility is to identify victims, but also we are obligated to provide all our documentation and all our evidence to the prosecutor office. And doctor, who is the boss of this project, he is forensic pathologist, he can be invited as an expert witness for the trials.
How do you feel after all these years, and if you could please mention how long you've been here working on these cases, on identifying people, how do you feel when you hear politicians still denying the Srebrenica genocide, despite the international war tribunals' rulings, the verdicts, the amount of effort put into the trials?
I've been working for ICMP for very long, since 2004, and I am forensic anthropologist, so I work only with skeletal material. I do anthropological examination of the cases, and I try not to think a lot about politicians and about their comments. I know what is my job is, and I know the result of this facility. I know the number of official identifications and number of buried people, which we all been involved in this process. So I think that I can't change political perspective and what they think and how they comment. That is the totally different part of my world. So I want to be only focused on my job, and I can show to all people which are interested what we did here and everything what I know from the bones, what I find out from the skeletal material. So other things I would leave for the other people.
And you yourself are not from Bosnia. The general atmosphere in the Balkans has always been shaky, so to say, since the end of the 1990s wars. What made you choose what you do today?
I came here totally accidentally. I never chose this job. It came accidentally right after I finished university. It is a very difficult job, very emotional job, very unusual job. There's not a lot of people who are part of this job. So I came here with zero knowledge, with zero experience, and I been involved in this process step by step, day by day. So I live like that with a lot of fear of everything, because you face with the death every day, with the murders, with the violence, and you are surrounded with a lot of people who are not from your country. They speak. This is international organization, so there's a lot of people from the abroad being involved in this process, and we are equal with each other. But I've been scary at beginning, but after 20 years, I'm still here. So I feel now very freely. I feel very okay. I took part of identification of a lot of persons. I did examination of a lot of cases. The past 20 years, you can imagine every day we did between 10 and 15 examinations per day. That is such a big number of examinations, of identification. So I'm very proud of what I managed so far. I'm very proud of my colleagues, of teamwork. This is teamwork. I'm now in front of camera, but there's a lot of people who are also involved in this process, archaeologists who work in the field, other anthropologists, administrative workers, DNA scientists. This is circle of the people, and every of us work one part of the job, but when we all do our jobs, it is circle, and we can say at the end we found, for example, one person, we have one name. So that is huge success for us. Every new DNA report is success for us. Every new examined case is success for us. Every new excavate case is success for us. So every day we are looking for some success, some new name, and that is also success for the families, because there's a lot of families who still wait for our phone calls.
Based on what had happened in the Balkans wars and the world that we see today, has society really learned anything in civilizations if we take into account the Rwanda genocide, the Srebrenica genocide, genocides in Burma, Myanmar, and today we're witnessing a genocide unfold in Gaza on our phones, which was not the case during those genocides in the past. Has society and humanity learned anything from our past, keeping in mind that we're surrounded by these bodies?
I'm not sure that we learn anything. So I would say that Latin impression, Historia magistra vita est, is not correct right now. you count a lot genocides, a lot innocent victims in the past, I think that we haven't learned anything, that the wars coming every day, smaller wars, bigger wars, and we are here only to, I would say, to resolve consequences and try to help maybe to families, or I don't know, but I'm afraid that those crimes and genocide will happen in the future.
Thank you very much for your time.
Just as the world watched in horror as the Srebrenica genocide unfolded, the devastating massacre in Gaza continues unabated. Many are asking, are we doomed to repeat mistakes of the past? Teda Imamovic takes a walk back in time.
Anger, despair, fear and confusion. Children crying, civilians desperately waiting for help and good news. The scenes in Srebrenica, Bosnia 30 years ago mirror what we are seeing today in Gaza. It wasn't prevented then, it's not stopped today. In July 1995, General Ratko Mladić arrived in Srebrenica with a fleet of trucks and buses. He told civilians they had no reason to worry.
Molim vas, budite veoma strpljivi. Samo malo. Svi koji žele da ostanu, mogu da ostanu. Svi koji žele da napuste ovu teritoriju također mogu. Obezbedili smo dovoljno i autobusa i kamiona, bit ćete premlačeni do Hladnjaka. Samo polako.
Shortly after, his soldiers began slaughtering thousands of civilians.
Ja sam general Mladić. O mene su vam svašta pričali, jel tako? Idete svi za Kladanj kao što su otišli ovi prije vas. Ne bojte se, ništa vam neće biti, slobodni ste.
Mladić, later dubbed the Butcher of Bosnia, believed he was chosen by fate to defend the Serb people from Western onslaught. Many years later, he realized his fate was to spend the rest of his life in prison for genocide.
Mladić was in charge of the Srebrenica operation. Srebrenica was Mladić's operation. And the chamber was right to conclude that he was criminally responsible for these crimes. Your Honors, in July 1995, Mladić used the Bosnian Serb forces under his command to execute thousands of Bosnian Muslim men and boys.
Mladić promoted himself as a simple man, chosen to protect his people, yet he oversaw a siege of the Bosnian capital Sarajevo for more than 3 years.
To whom do you extend humanitarian aid? To the dying people, to people under siege. So it's still under siege.
Together with Radovan Karadžić and ex-Yugoslav President Slobodan Milošević, Mladić formed a Serb nationalist triumvirate that began a wave of ethnic killings in a bid to redraw the map of the region. Mladić was the soldier. His specialty was waging war, while Karadžić was the ideologue.
Nemojte da mislite da nećete odvesti Bosnu i Hercegovinu u pakao, a muslimanski narod možda u nestanak. Jer muslimanski narod ne može da se odbrani ako bude rat ovdje.
The way Karadžić talked then is similar to the way Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu talks today, calling Hamas terrorists, claiming all he does is self-defense and that no civilians are killed.
But we have to fight against the terrorism. We have already captured the Muslim terrorists. And if we don't control our own territory, Muslims are going to kill our children as they already did. So we are going to behave as any other state.
Similarly to the way Netanyahu is still supported today by some, 30 years ago, Karadžić was seen as a powerful leader. He did not believe that one day he would be convicted and sentenced.
Nobody can arrest me in my country.
No.
Nobody can arrest me. And nobody should arrest any of my people.
On the 21st of July 2008, Serbian security forces arrested Karadžić after being on the run for more than 12 years. He had grown a long beard to conceal his identity and lived freely for months in Belgrade before being arrested. He became the highest-ranked person to be convicted and sentenced at the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia. Former Serbian President Slobodan Milošević was indicted in 1999. His trial lasted over 4 years, from 2002 until he was found dead in his cell in 2006 at the age of 64.
It is a great pity for justice that the trial will not be completed and no verdict will be rendered. However, other senior leaders have been indicted for the crimes for which Slobodan Milošević was also accused.
Mladić's verdict was watched live from the Srebrenica Memorial Center. He was sentenced to life imprisonment for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. Radovan Karadžic's final verdict was in 2019.
Given the above, the appeals chamber considers that the sentence of 40 years imposed by the trial chamber underestimates the extraordinary gravity of Karadžic's responsibility and his integral participation in the most egregious of crimes, a sentence of life imprisonment.
Those who committed war crimes in Srebrenica believed they were untouchable, immune to justice, shielded from accountability. But the souls of the thousands of innocent lives they took did not rest. In time, justice caught up with them. Wrong was made right. Tejda Imamović, Across the Balkans.
Thank you very much for watching TRT World and letting us once again take you across the Balkans. That is all from the team for this week. We will see you next time.